Good day, everybody. Welcome to our webinar. My name is John Henkel. I'm the Director of Product Marketing for our business division here at NETGEAR. And today we are going to wow you. Honestly, we really are. We're going to show you some amazing things firsthand. We'll demo our new Engage controller for our AV switches, Pro AV switches. And we'll see just how easy that is. Alex is going to walk you through that from the initial install all the way up through configuration. So Alex Pendleton is our senior systems engineer, and he's one of the awesome Pro AV engineering services team members. For Q&A throughout the event, we have two other awesome system engineers on the line to help, Keith and Derek. Ask that you use the Q&A for those questions versus chat. If you want to do some chat on your own or amongst others, feel free, but use the Q&A if you would for any actual questions. We'll try to take those throughout the webinar or save some to the end if it's appropriate. So we want to make sure we get through all this content. It's going to be a jam-packed hour, I know, as always. So first things, we did the questions things, and then the other reason you might be here is because you will be able to be entered into a raffle, if you're here for the entire webinar, to win your very own NETGEAR M4250 GSM 4212P. Oh, I got to change that slide. This is what you can win if you stick around to the end. So stick around. We hope that's not the only reason you're here, but that certainly will help you understand what those are like for yourself, AV line, and those will be controllable by the Engage controller as well. So stick around afterwards to see if you've won, and we'll announce that, and you'll need to send an email to email address on that slide, nachannelmarketing@netgear.com. I'll bring it back up at the end as well. So that is all the preamble stuff. If for some reason questions aren't answered, then we'll make sure we do email you directly. We'll get a copy of them if we don't answer them, and you'll have ways to contact us to figure that out. So that's it for the preamble, if you will. And today, here's what we're going to talk about. We're going to give you a little overview of the AV switch line, product lines. We actually have 3 different ones. We're going to show you some new products if you didn't already know. We have those little bitty desktop switches that have just been released, or soon to be released, I should say. We've been talking about them for a while. And then what we're here today to talk about and show you is the NETGEAR Engage controller, the software controller we basically pulled out of the AV switches, and now let you talk to the 4250s and 43s. We'll talk about that coming up. And then my buddy Alex is going to show you real time. He's in the lab, as you can see. It's not a fake background. That's the real lab he's in. He'll show you how to use Engage and get it going. So you'll have an understanding of that. So first up, just a little bit about what we offer here at NETGEAR for our switch lines. These are all engineered for AV over IP with software, or in the case of the 4250 with the actual hardware. And you can see they're different. The ports are in the back of the 4250 line. You can turn them around if you want to, but they're made to fit in an AV rack and look really nice with all the other electronics there. We have the 4300s, the workhorses of our managed switches. These are all fully managed switches. Those do 1G and 10G, have that awesome modular 96X switch on the right side there that has modules you can plug in for copper, fiber, PoE ports, SFP as well. That's just a really great switch. And then the 4500 is your core switch that does up to 100 gigs. So we have the 4250 line for 1 gig applications. There's some 10 gig uplink ports on those, but mainly 1G audio and video. 4300s do both, of course, 1G and 10G. You see some half rack options there, and we have larger options as well for the 4300s. So we really cover any kind of situation you want. We got a switch for you. We're covered there. The new switches coming soon later this quarter are these 4250 switches, the desktop version. And we'll show you those at some trade shows coming up. We have IBC in Amsterdam coming up in early September. We have CEDIA on the residential side coming up later in September. We'll have them at the show, but these guys are sweet. You can tuck them behind a display or under a conference room table. And those have varying 2 different models, varying port counts. One has 2 SFP ports, the other one has 1. So 8 normal copper ports and either 2 uplink ports, 1 copper, 1 SFP, or 2 SFPs. Take your pick. The top model here is also fanless. So it's quiet, completely quiet for a recording studio, conference room, home office, wherever you want. That's a really good option. If you need some more power, more PoE power, then the other model has some fans in it, but it has the awesome 4250 fan control. So you can turn those off in some situations or just down to quiet mode and get very, very little fan noise. All the specs are on the website, so I'm not going to bore you with all those. So those 2 models are the newest to the 4250 line. Those are coming up. We're saying Q3. We're not going to lie to you and saying they're ready and we're going to wait. Not quite there yet. We want to make sure they're ready and get the supply in, but those are coming, honestly, and those will be found in your typical AV channel places. So what we're also announcing about the same time is this NETGEAR Engage Controller software. It's really groundbreaking. If you have kept up with us in the last couple of years, you've seen the M4250 line debut the AV GUI. This is an extension of that, where we pulled that GUI off of the 4250 switches, and it's a standalone application for Windows, Mac, or Linux. It's in final betas right now. We'll show you the most recent beta version of it today. But that lets you get a lot of the goodness of the AV GUI, meaning you can configure with profiles for Dante, for NDI, for Crestron, for ZV, for Aurora, whatever. Set up a profile for those ports. And then now with Engage, you can send that across multiple switches, as well as doing more goodness like onboarding switches, push software, firmware updates across the board. So a lot of wonderful things with Engage. And this is the first version out, first phase 1 release. We have more good things coming. So this is just the first embodiment. You have neat things like you see on the screen there, the network neighborhood and topology of your network. And again, Alex is going to show you that live, so don't just take my word for it. But these are some really, really unique things that are really targeting the AV market. And we've gotten some really good feedback and some good updates from you all. Appreciate that. And they're advancing how easy it is to deploy AV over IP. Here today to talk about that is Alex Pendleton, and I said we have a couple other guys on the call. Alex is one of the great team we have that are dedicated to answering your calls and your design requests and what product should I use, do I have enough uplinks, blah, blah, blah. Simple email to proavdesign@netgear.com, and you get one of these fine gentlemen to answer your email within a couple of hours. Usually it's 5 or 10 minutes, it seems like. So it's pretty awesome. They can provide network designs, help troubleshoot before, during, and after the installation. So don't forget to take advantage of that. And here to show you more is our buddy Alex Pendleton. So let me stop sharing, and we'll let Alex go through the demo for you.
Thanks, John. So I hope you can see my screen here now.
We got it.
Move this over here so it's not in the way. All right, so I'm going to go through the installation and setup and configuration. We're going to onboard some switches, and then we'll go through the screens. So this is our latest beta 1.0.1.35. It opens up a little screen like this, a little WinRAR self-extractor, and you run through the installation process just like this. And it'll launch the application once the installation. We're also installing this into the user folder instead of programs. Makes it easier to get to, doesn't cause any of the other problems that could possibly go wrong with that. So after we install there, we're right into the application. It's loading all of the particulars. And the first screen we'll see is the name of the login that we'll use for our site, or for our Engage controller. So this is the login that you'll utilize to get in. It can be anything. You can default to admin if you want. We'll use just the default there. Now this is the password for the controller itself. When I go ahead and enter the password, it'll be utilized every time I want to log in, even if I were to export this to another location, or export it from here and then import it to another location. So I'm going to give it the super secure password of password123 just for this demo, but I would suggest using a more secure password than this one in the future. And we'll hit next. So now I get to name a site. So I can do that, or I can import a site from a saved configuration file, and I'll get in how to do that. So we'll call this the Pro AV Lab, and we'll give it a description of its location. Pro AV Lab SJ for San Jose, California. And we'll give it again a super secure password of password. And make sure that is all correct, and hit next at the bottom right. And now we come to the networking portion. So for right now, I have a DHCP server in my network here at the lab, and this is the instructions on what you need to look for essentially if you're not on a DHCP, but you can click this little drop down right here, and it should show you the interfaces that are currently on your computer that you're going to want to utilize to detect your switches that are on the network with you. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and select this for my main network. You can also have options to do static or static with the DHCP server if there's some other scope there. But right now, we'll just focus on the DHCP. So I'll go ahead and hit next. That'll bring me to the discovery screen. So now I can onboard these switches that you see here. So right now I've got a few of them here. As you can see, I've got a 40 gig or 40G 8XF PoE++. That's our UPoE. I'm going to go ahead and onboard that guy. I'm going to use the default because it's a brand new switch out of the box. So I'll use the default password, hit add. Okay, that one's ready to go. So let me see which one, what other ones do I want to use? Let's see. Let's try this one right here. This is a M4300 24XF. So I'll click that guy over as the default since we're utilizing that one in the default state as well. And let's see, maybe a stacked device. Okay, yeah, I got my stack right here. This looks, you can tell it's a stack because it has these two switches right here, but it's a stack of M4300 52Gs. So let's go ahead and onboard this one, use the default there. And one more, let's do this 16X right here. So this is our all 10 gig 16 copper PoE capable M4300. So let's go ahead and add those. So now I should have 4 switches that are pending, ready to go. So now I'm ready to hit next and move on to the final portion of the onboarding here, which is I'm going to go ahead and add the network profiles. So I know I'm going to have some video streaming. So let's go ahead and select video. And hit next, and let's call this video EP for video endpoints. We'll give it 100 as a VLAN. I'll give this a nice blue color. Click OK. So now it looks good to me, so I'm going to hit apply. I know I'm going to have some audio in here, so let's go ahead and get a audio Dante and hit next. Audio Dante. And then I'm going to use 150 as my VLAN ID here, but you can use whatever you want. Do like a rich red color here. And that all looks good to me, so I'm going to go ahead and hit apply. And let's do a lighting profile. One more profile, because I know that this is going to be a really incredible experience. We want to have visual, video, and audio, and also lighting as well. So we'll call this SACN.
And those are pretty new profiles too, right, for lighting, Alex?
Yeah, that's right. That came this summer, actually. Well, just before the summer, I should say, in May, we put an actual profile in for lighting as we found out a little bit more about what those types of networks require. So I'll make a nice orange color for the lighting and give VLAN 200, and that looks good to me. So I'm going to go ahead and hit apply. So yeah, that looks good to me. So those will be the 3 profiles that will be sent directly and configured on all of the devices that we just onboarded. So now I'm going to hit finish, and it starts to do its little cooking. As you can see, it starts to do the device setup. We've already gone through Engage Password Edition, the site setup, the network setup portion. So now we're going to go ahead and go through adding all the profile configurations that we just put in, all the unique things that you normally do through the AVUI experience, but utilizing the controller and onboarding all of those switches simultaneously. All right, so that's all done. I wish we would have had like a little Jeopardy music for that.
I know, I was ready for you, but that actually wasn't that bad. It's pretty good.
Yeah, it was super fast, wasn't it? All right, so let's go back to the now we're in the main meat of this. So after we've onboarded the switches and we've configured them, we've added the profiles, we now come to this manage device screen. Now, it doesn't mean we can't add more devices. We have a discover screen at the bottom here. We could onboard more units if we wanted to. But when utilizing these 4 units, we can also now start going into a deeper configuration. I can hit configuration on this M4250, and immediately I'm looking at the ports and hovering on what exactly, I get the exact AVUI experience that I would usually get if I was using the M4250. I could see that directly from the controller, and you can see all my profiles are in there, and all of the fans are ready to go. So you can go from screen to screen as you would normally do. But this time now, the big thing, the reason that this Engage controller was brought forth so quickly, and the reason we started this process is because we wanted to be able to use the same AVUI experience on an M4300, which is an older platform, and I'll show you why. It uses a little bit more RAM, Some devices have more RAM than others, and they just weren't built originally for AV, but they were converted into it. So the AV UI experience being realized on them is a unique thing for that switch platform. And that's what you get with the Engage controller, is you get the ability to utilize this awesome experience, this awesome configuration experience on this older switching platform.
Those 4300 switches came out like in 2016, I believe, right?
That's right. Yeah, 2016, and you know, the M4300 96X a little bit after that. But yeah, it's a very mature platform, so it's very strong. But yeah, putting the AV UI directly on it was not a very good idea. So the Engage controller was fast tracked, and it's the right idea, because we want to get to this in the future. We want to add to this. We want to build on it and take this technology further. So with that being the case,
one more point too, if I know there were some audio problems earlier, hopefully we've kind of conquered some of that, but
okay.
If you have it on individual switches like the 4250s, that's great, but you have to log into each switch. So
That's
this
right.
way, for 4250s and 4300s, even if you have 2 switches, it's kind of a pain. So the Engage lets you log into all those switches and do all that stuff at once.
It makes it a centralized management platform for the switches. As you can see, it's very quick to go into each one that you need for right now, and that works. And then bringing them all in, also discovering them, that's all a big benefit, a big value add to configuring a lot of switches. And one thing that we've noticed, and I think what me and my manager, Laurent Mazia, when we started thinking about this controller initially, is that was the difficulty. Yes, we had lots of networks that were buying a lot of switches, but how do we configure them all, you know? So we needed a way to get to that. And this is a great beginning to that relationship. So this is the topology. As you can see, you can kind of go through and take a look at all of the connected devices. Now, my lab is kind of a labyrinth of all sorts of different connected devices, but you can immediately see that this is the 24XF, and you can kind of hover over here to get the MAC address of this device. And you can also go into the configuration. Once you do have that, you can quickly jump to the configuration of that device if you want to, and then go through and add different configurations. So from the topology view, you can jump to the configuration. Now, keep in mind, this is a beta. It's got its rough edges, so we're working those out slowly. But this is an excellent beginning to a new system that we'll be able to advance upon.
And to that beta real quick, you know, we've actually put this out to 30 or 40 people, I think, or more.
Oh, I think a little bit
users.
more than that. Yeah, I think there's a little bit more than that. The user base is very broad and diverse. Everyone has their own kind of unique thing that they do with this controller, and also with the NETGEAR switches and in the AV space. So this has been a very good feedback. We've got a lot of communication between our beta portal and our customers. So it's been very, very good beta.
Good question on the topology real quick. Can this be printed? It's a good question. I don't think we've incorporated that functionality yet.
No, it can't be printed. It would be a good idea. You can change it up here. So there's a little caret here. You can kind of go to like the different tree view or the abstract view, so you can kind of see what it looks like that way. But yeah, you can switch it. There's no print capability, but that's a really good idea.
Yet, no print capability yet.
Yeah.
I'm in marketing, don't forget it.
I like it.
Alex is the realist and I'll be the dreamer a little bit. Yeah.
Well, we'll definitely, once we get the topology dialed in, it's something we can look at for sure.
Yeah. Good.
The save button is up here so you can get to it easy. You can also manage multiple sites. You can switch between sites if needed. I did want to show the configuration of the stack real quick, because that will always be a question. So when you do a configuration of a stack, you will only see the one switch essentially. But if you wanted to configure multiple switches, and I'll show again, because these M4300 52Gs don't have that much RAM, so we have to go back and forth from the AV experience to the switch. But essentially, you click this little drop down, and that'll take you to Unit 2 really quickly, and then you can configure your ports on that switch, and you can go to this one like this. So it does have functionality for configuring the ports for all of the switches in the stacked environment. I just want to make sure I showed that before.
And just on stacking too, real quick, the 4250s do not stack.
That's correct.
4300s do.
That's why it's very unique for this controller to show the AVUI experience with the stacking, is because the M4250s out of the gate did not have stacking, and the M4300s do have stacking. So we needed to show a way, or have a way, to incorporate that into the configuration process.
Got it.
All right, so site settings is going to show me all the profiles. You can always add another profile here if you needed to. You can also edit the profile that you had selected or created initially. If you wanted to do that, you can also delete it as well from this one. Also, any changes that you make sure you hit the save button so that you get the save done correctly. If you go to controller management, this is going to be the site information. This is where you can import another site, so you can change it up here or create a new site for a different opportunity to manage. You can also change your password, edit the current site, or export the site. You can also do a different network setup if you wanted to from there.
Hey, Alex, real quick, cover passwords for a second, because that was a pretty cool thing too, where each switch may have its own password or unique password, but you can override that with the controller, right? Yeah,
you can override it, but on the initial onboarding, if you've already configured a password, you'll need to enter that password in for the initial onboarding. But what I was doing is I was utilizing essentially, and you can also specify the controller password as well if you're re-onboarding a switch. So if you're re-onboarding a switch that's already been added to a controller, you can always just re-add that controller password and it'll set it. In this case, all of the switches were fresh out of the box, and so I used the default password. But yeah, you can set up each one individually if you'd like.
And also, I just thought of something else, because it came up in other emails offline, that as we release the Engage controller, there'll be updated firmware for all the switches that are going to be part of it, because the existing switches may not have all the functionality. So if you download the Engage controller when it's available, it's free download. It'll be from our website. You'll need to also most likely update your switches.
And the onboarding process will be a little longer with that, because you'll need to update the firmware and then reboot the switch. But after it's rebooted, it'll be back. And the reboot can take up to 135 seconds. So that will delay the device setup to finish completed onboarding process when you're setting up a switch that's on an older firmware, because we will, with that switch. Oh, go ahead.
So let's say, so you get Engage controller, you have existing switches, you can download Engage controller, it'll still find your switch, but then you need to update firmware. You can do that with Engage.
Exactly. Yeah, so we wanted to have the most up-to-date experience, and we needed to update the firmware specifically on the M4300s. Although we did lay the groundwork in the previous firmware, there's still a little bit more work that needed to be done. So that's why it's there.
Gotcha. It's always good to keep the firmware up to date, of course, as we all know. Sometimes people want to lock it down and not have to update anything. But in this case, you'll have to update for take advantage of this.
So if you want to go to our community support or our about pages, we still have that question and help, as you would see in the AVUI. And then we have our change engage password here and our logout if needed. But truthfully, the setup and everything that we've done so far is how you can get to the management of all of these devices and begin right away. And that's pretty much the entire demo. I can't think of really anything else, but yeah.
That's it. I gave you you got 45 minutes. We could do the whole thing. No, because really we're talking about Engage and making sure people know about that. We have other videos you can find on our YouTube site for the AV GUI, and a lot of it's going to be the same, of course, with this, but the cool new things with Engage is why we're here, certainly. So a couple of questions, and I know we've answered some of these perhaps, but maybe it wasn't that clear. You can update multiple switches firmware at the same time, right?
Yep.
That's easy. You select them and update them all. Does Engage see all devices on the network?
Yes, it won't see all of the other endpoints. It'll only see NETGEAR devices. If that was the question, it'll see all NETGEAR switches, and it'll see M4300s, M4250s. We do have another group of switches that are M4500s that will be coming at a later date, but there's a lot more work that we'll need to do to get to that. Not necessarily on the functionality side, but because those are more advanced switches, we want to kind of add a little bit more to it. So that's the goal with those.
And I know it's confusing a little bit, confusing in marketing talking about this. We have the Engage controller, which is only for those 3 switch lines, 4250, M4300, and 4500 switches. But the we have other switches, of course. We have hundreds of other switches that are not part of this Engage controller because they're not really the AV line of switches. You may still use them in some other situations. So like the GS700 series or something like that, somebody asked. Those could be Insight capable switches, and they have their own goodness through Insight, but through Engage, they're not part of the Engage controller. Engage is really just the AV switches.
That's right. Yeah, currently it's only for the M4250, M4300, and it'll be M4500 down the road at a different version.
Hey, Alex, can you hear me?
Yep, can hear you, Derek.
This is your buddy, Derek. One question that came up earlier, I think this is really important. What operating systems will this work on? Is this Windows only, or are we going to be able to put this on Linux? Do you want to expand a little bit on what platforms? My understanding is it's not an install. You're not installing this product onto the portable.
It's a very portable application. The really heavy lifting is done by Java, but we run our own wrapper for it, so you don't have to have Java installed. It can be on a Mac, Linux, or Windows environment.
Any Linux.
Utilize it on Windows 10.
Yeah, you could put it on a thumb drive, right? And then just launch it from a thumb drive on.
You can launch it from a thumb drive. Yep.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
And that's where that controller management, if we go back over there, that's where that import site item will be. Is you can export the site and then save it after you've configured everything, and then take it to another location, use it on a different computer, launch the program, the Engage program from a flash drive, import the site, authenticate to it, and you'll have all of your configuration that you've already set up the controller with.
Awesome. And then another question, it's a good one. What other kind of monitoring do we have? Really was centered around IGMP performance, things like that. Could you talk about some of that, Alex?
Yeah, so right now for the dashboard stuff, that I think that's what they're looking for. We only really have if you go into the configuration page, you can kind of hover on each port and kind of see some information for each port. You can also come down to diagnostics and port statistics in the individual switch and kind of see your counters, your bit rate per port, stuff like that. Any RX errors, if there were, transmit errors, which is very helpful during troubleshooting. But that right now in this phase, that would be the only item that you can get to, and we'll explore a lot more in the future to give you a lot more feedback of what's happening in the network.
And there's stuff, I can't talk about it just yet, but at upcoming trade shows like CD, I know we'll announce some of this. There's some other interactions we have going with some other partners that would help some of this network monitoring, other things. And it's some of them come to us. Some of them said their customers are asking if they support NETGEAR. So it's not just us going out after these partners. So we are talking to all kinds of people, not just endpoint partners, but also network monitoring tool partners, and some really cool things on the horizon for that coming up too. It's that public company disclaimer, right? I can't tell you who just yet. I can't talk about it before it's ready.
It's on its
way. I got the shirt on. I got to be the company. Where is it? There it is.
Yeah, there it is.
Company line. Let's see. What else do we have in questions? Derek, anybody else? Anything else pop up that we should take care of here?
It's
like you're stretching.
Some basic stuff here.
Yeah, I think you and Keith are handling a bunch of the questions, so that's good.
I could also add a little bit. I mean, you got to understand that this is the very beginning of something really, really amazing that NETGEAR, and I can even tell a little story about it. So when after we started the Pro AV design team nearly 2.5 or so years ago, the question came to me from my manager, like, what do we do? What do we want to do? What does the future hold? What do we want to see happen? And I know we have an older network management system, the NMS 300. Yeah. It's very non-portable, if you want to call it that, and it takes a ton of RAM. It almost needs a server to run, a lot of processing power, and it's patched together with all the different older devices that we had. It just was not what I would expect NETGEAR to have. So this Engage controller, aptly named by John, that we want to have a resource light and very impactful software that you can use just in the first phase to manage multiple devices at the same time, but even future to come up with ideas to leverage this technology to make your life even more simplified. NETGEAR is known for creating applications and products that benefit the life and make it a little bit less stressful, and that's the goal with the Engage controller.
Yeah, Alex, another question that does come up several times, not just today, but that I've gotten is any cloud hosting options here. You know, I'm telling everybody it's all local. I mean, this is a local.
Yeah, this is a local thing, and I think right now with it, we'll get everything really, really solid local, and make sure that is just absolutely super tight. And then again, like I say, we can't commit to anything obviously, but we can always investigate.
Yeah, and there is a roadmap. I mentioned phase one. There's a roadmap of things we think should happen with Engage, but as it gets out there, we'll certainly listen to feedback and what you feel you need and what is not working for you, what's working. Like somebody.
We can't do it without the feedback of all the integrators, manufacturers, and partners we have out there. I mean, it's really extraordinary the amount of response that we've gotten, and we need that feedback to keep us moving in the right direction, so that this application can be utilized and be successful for your implementations out there.
So a couple other great questions. Sorry.
Another interesting question I thought was, what if you got a couple techs that are on site? Yeah, exactly, John. And they're both kind of managing the devices with Engage, and they're both making changes. I'd assume it's whoever made the latest change is going to be, that's going to be the latest configuration. And then
actually, it won't allow for multiple users to be in the same device. So if you're logged in if I log into this device at the top, 192.168.200.232, and then Derek on some other part of it says, oh, I need to make a change to that device also, it'll need to be communicated. And that's really a security and also a stability fix made, because you're right, when you're dealing with that kind of scenario, who got there first, if you will. You don't want to have to program that, because it's just not a good idea. So blocking one out and making the other one the admin or the management is the way to go. Can both controllers discover and add? Can there be two sites running? Sure, absolutely. But when it comes to the configuration platform, it'll need to be communicated between the team.
Good point. So that brings up a question for me, being more of a layman, non-engineer. So you have a site you create. That site is created on the same thumb drive, let's say, as Engage. It's part of that package, if you will, right? It's not on the switch.
Right.
It would be portable with me. So if somebody else, you would need to export that site and send that site to somebody else for them to also have that.
That's right. And they would have to authenticate as well. So it has the site, not site, but the controller management authentication as well.
Gotcha. So there's just some things to think about. No cloud hosting at this point. This is all local management.
That's right.
At this point, for this time, at this point, in this time of the day, this point, it's not cloud hosted. So it is only local management. And then Damon actually has used it sounds like, because he said, I'm only able to update firmware on one specific switch at a time. How can you do update firmware on multiple switches? Can you show that? Oh,
yeah. So if you click this over here and you can only update manually from there. You can't do the online. When I'm talking about the multiple, I'm talking about the initial onboarding process will update multiple at the same time.
Gotcha. Thanks for the clarification. Okay, That's a point we didn't make earlier. So sorry about that, Damon. So for each switch, once they're already onboarded. So when you onboard a switch, we'll update them just to make sure they're all up to date.
That's right.
Afterwards, if there's another firmware update, you are on your own to update each switch.
It'll be a manual update, yes.
Gotcha. But this is the discussion, what you guys are asking for, and what we can put in a later release, perhaps. What else am I missing down here? So let's see. Industrial hard H environment. Yeah, field mounted switch, dirty behind the display. Good questions. For a more industrial version.
Yeah, I replied to that.
Yep.
I get that question from time to time. Do we do?
What was the question?
Well, industrial switch and harsh environments with super high and super low operating temperatures. It's just not a market that we're keen to. It's not a big market, I don't think.
Well, I can tell you that the not necessarily the M4300s, because again, these are converted switches from IT world into AV experience, if you will. They're just not really designed for that. We've had a few like marine deployments that use the M4300 in the past for like big yachts and stuff like that. But for the M4250 though, I can tell you the front has an LED extension capable, so you can see the lights on an enclosure, and then you can build a custom enclosure to put that switch inside. And then you could deploy that into the harsh environment if you wanted to do that. But the current specs of that switch are going to be, however we allow it to go out through the warranty. But if you wanted to do your own enclosure, you have options to build into that enclosure that'll allow for that switch to function.
Alex, one other question that's coming up is, and this is a good question, do you have to have the Engage software up and running constantly in order for those settings? And my answer is you can go in there and set it up and then turn it off and close it down, and you're done.
Yeah, you can still, in fact, I can also demonstrate that. Let's see, let me make sure I have the IP address here. But if I wanted to go to this 200, say .200.234, I'm already on the M4300 right here. I'll just log in. Bam, I'm on the 24XF, the M4300 24XF. So I don't need the controller up and running in order to get to this device's now AVUI experience. So I can go directly to it and still have access to it. It's a good question.
I love this kind of stuff. Keep it coming. I think what's I can tell from the people we get, our IT crowd, we have VARs, we have end users, we have a really good mix of people here. So it's really good to talk back and forth and figure out what's going on. Yeah. Are there any functions in Engage that are not available directly on the switch itself?
Are there any functions on the Engage controller that are not on the switch?
Correct. That's what Jesse's asking.
No, I don't think so. Everything that you, other than the topology view, which I can bring that back up. Give me just a moment.
There are things that are certainly on the switch that aren't available in Engage, but not the other way around, except for like you say, topology view. Yeah.
Yeah, the topology view, the kind of like the global site settings, if you will, to see all of the profiles on all the switches. That kind of stuff is more the controller, if you will, and seeing them in this kind of view. But other than that, there's nothing that, because if I go to configure this switch, then I literally go to that switch's interface and I'm connected to that switch directly to configure it at this stage, or this phase, if you will. So yeah, pretty much everything that you can do with the controller is a layer above for the onboarding process and the discovery, and then also the topology view. Then you have the site settings, which is like creating a profile for all of the switches in the controller, not necessarily just one specific switch, whereas you can still go to one specific switch and create a new profile, and that's just for that switch through the configuration page. So that's kind of a little bit of a difference, but yeah, there's no additional settings that we're adding in the Engage controller that is not in the switch.
Yeah, another question that's coming up. Another question that's coming up is how do I configure the ports for the switches? So when you did your demo, of course, we saw that the profiles were applied to all the switches, but the reality is you got to go to each individual switch to add the ports to those profiles, because I mean, there's not first of all, the port counts could be all different from all the switches. So there can't be one master view and you just say, okay, I'm gonna assign ports 1 through 24 to that profile. And what if you got a 10 port switch?
Now, what we could do, and this is always something that we could explore or could continue to iterate on, is bringing a grand configuration like we have here in the site settings. We could add a little button up here that takes us to another device view page like this, only you see all of the switches that you onboarded, And then you could take each switch individually for each profile, select which profile you want on each port, similar to how you would go in here and edit this profile. If I wanted to select ports like 5, 7, and 9 for this one and then hit apply, then I would have that configured for that profile on those ports. We could do that in the controller in the future, but it's something we'll have to continue to explore. But as of right now, it's not something we're completed yet.
It sounds like you've already thought about that, Alex. It sounds like it's already been an idea.
I'm trying to be as PC as possible. NETGEAR, should I throw a disclaimer? NETGEAR is a public company. We cannot give roadmap guaranteed information. All right.
Very good. But there could be a button right here. I like that. Yeah. So yes, we're more work coming on this for sure. What else do we got here? Extra profiles. Is there any problem adding extra profiles onto a switch that are not needed or assigned, like default company configuration, regardless of where the network devices are in play?
Nope. Like we'll give an example. Say like this 20 or this 16X right here is my top of rack switch that's going to connect to a corporate network or something, and I don't need the profile on other switches, so I could come here and add a profile for data. So I can come in here, same thing, and we'll say like port 13 is going out to them, so I could call this the internet, and we'll give it 99, and then I could give it like a greenish color, darkish greenish color, something like that, and then click the little slider here, make this DHCP, because the corporate network that I'm connecting to is going to offer me an IP address automatically. So I'll select DHCP, click apply, and I've gone and created my internet VLAN that is on this switch specifically. Doesn't necessarily need to be all on the site.
No problem. No problem whatsoever. Do it either way you'd like.
Exactly.
This is great. We're getting a lot of good questions answered and showing off a lot of good things here. Eduardo, Derek just answered that. Yes, Dante, all of our switches are Dante certified. Alex has been one of the main guys who's been certifying all that. We have like 160 some partners. You can see some of that in the back.
Yeah.
A number of partners where they send us equipment, we send our equipment to them and make sure it's certified and fully vetted, whether it's for Dante or for whatever format of audio video. We know that we have a profile for it that has been vetted and fully works. So
yeah.
And I have a few large installations that received the beta, that participated in the beta. They've had a really good time setting up, utilizing the Engage controller. There was, a couple things that we needed to work out, but I think overall, 95% we're there. You just need to get a little of the beta, hurdles out of the way, and then this is going to be a really great experience for everyone using it.
And we know that this is critical to a job going well or not. So we didn't release it before it's ready. We're not doing that.
That's right.
Mainly because you guys are handling the phone calls.
Yeah, if we went back, I mean, when we originally started receiving the alpha, we knew that we were going to need to take more time because we wanted it to just be perfect. As one of our engineers, our software engineers, Faye says, there's no perfect software though, so you're always going to have some scenarios that you'll have to overcome. But I think this is such a great start. I mean, it's way more than I had imagined for our first iteration of it. I'm super excited that you can take profiles and put them on all the switches simultaneously through the site settings. I think that's such a big step towards where we want to get ultimately. So I'm really happy with it.
Alex, I have there's a really good question here. Expand a little bit on that big old save button next to the Pro AV Lab. In other words, we know you just sent out your profiles to all the switches, and we know with the fully managed series, you've got to manually save your configuration. Does that big old save button do that for all the switches?
That's right. It saves the configuration that you've done for all the switches. It saves all the switches simultaneously.
That's huge because that keeps you from having to manually go into each one. That would be a nightmare or pain in the butt.
I think that was one of the main pieces changes from the alpha to the beta. We knew that it needed to be there because we, you know, if you've ever worked with a managed switch before and you've accidentally not saved all of the configuration, and then you can like, let's just reboot the switch. It's everything's there, and then it comes back. It's back into its default state, which is, you know, probably one of the more common things. Yeah, there's two types of configurations running on all of our managed switches. There's the running configuration, which is everything happening live, and then there's the startup configuration, and they're two different files. So you need to take the copy of the running and overwrite the startup, which is what that big save button is in the right-hand corner. You're copying all of what you've just done and putting it in the startup. So when the switch boots back up or you lose power or what have you, everything's still running the way you configured it.
And our last question today wasn't a question, but we can't have an Alex Pendleton webinar without a Go Pack Go.
Yeah, all right. Go Pack Go. I was actually at the Niners game on Friday, and I'm not happy with Jordan Love. So Aaron better take his Wheaties and last for another 5 or 6 years.
We could fill some time on that alone, right? On the pack discussion. I know that.
Oh man, how bad they got beat. I was so mad. I mean, they were in it. It looks like they were in it, but I was at the game. It was pretty bad. So
It's got to be hard. I'm
that
glad
was
you got
just
to go.
backups. Guys trying to make the team, so it was fun to watch.
Not perfect, right? In the Bay Area, they come to you. That's a good time to see your favorite team in person. Cool.
Yeah, I get lucky that way. I've seen them a few times here.
Yeah,
Well, I'm gonna. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, if no DHCP server will engage assign different OOB IP addresses. Well, bottom line is if you don't have a DHCP server, what happens there?
You can do a static IP address. I showed it in the onboarding. There was a DHCP section, and then there's a static section.
Yeah,
I just so happen to have a DHCP server here. It's an old SRX 5308, one of my favorite routers we used to sell. But it's doing DHCP, so I did it that way. But you can set static and make everything static if you really wanted to. Also, we will, as you saw there was a DHCP server option for the controller that will, it's like in its infancy, so it's not available yet.
But the out of band port will never change, right? It's always the same.
Out of band is always an option to manage it, and I really would like the world to get familiar with the console cable, because if all else fails, there's always a console cable.
What, 232 or USB?
So USB Type C for the M4250. M4300 is a mini USB connection to Type A.
Always an option.
Well, John, I guess I'm going to type in the Pro AV design email. If anything we did miss, or if any other questions come up, I want to make sure everybody gets those answered. So I'll type that into the.
Yeah. Let me. I'll go back to sharing my own screen. How's that?
Yep.
I got that up here on screen.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
Do it on chat as well. The questions. That's good. So a couple resources for that community. We have a community website that a lot of people answer the questions for us, which is great. But our team does hang out there as well. You'll find a AV over IP specific room or a forum there as well when you go in on the business side. So community.netgear.com, and then the general Pro AV portal, netgear.com/ProAV. You'll find all the switches there and links to those and other little information. There's also a link there on that page to our Pro AV resources section, which has got all kinds of white papers and images and links to videos. And we have a Netgear YouTube channel with some tech tips. So you'll find that on the Pro AV page. You'll scroll down and see the Pro AV resources. We have our training academy too. So just was dealing with some of that earlier today. We have great academy, good courses at netgear.academy. That is the full URL, no .com after that. Some AV over IP courses, some general business networking courses as well. A lot of good AV over IP stuff for all of you dealing with that. And then here's links, real simple, for any Netgear product in general, by the way, netgear.com/ and use that model name and you'll get right to it. Here's some links to just the product series of these 3 switches. But if you're looking for specific product info, netgear.com, and just add the model after that, you'll get right there. Of course, social media, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. There's for sales information, we have a sales team, direct access, and then the awesome Pro AV design team, of which a couple of them are right here, and they'll help you figure that stuff out. I think we're going to wrap up early. That's never happened. See, when I do it with Laurent, it's a different structure. I think he talks longer, just a little bit.
Yeah.
Fills in more background.
His
love it.
explanations are
I
a
miss
little
the
bit more
accent.
detailed.
I missed the accent today.
Yeah.
It's been great having you, Alex. Really nice job on the demo, and you
Happy
stir
to
up some
be
good questions, which is great, and you show people exactly what they need to know. I appreciate it.
Where can folks get this copy of this?
It'll be in the our partner portal. Most of them got an email right from our channel, so it'll be in the partner portal. And if you are also registered, you'll get sent that link as well.
Oh, perfect.
Did you announce the winner?
And we'll put it on YouTube as well. So yes. So here, don't forget today's prize, GSM 4212P switch, looks sort of like that. And the winner would be Daniel Hawkins. So Daniel, send an email to nachannelmarketing@netgear.com. And you are the new proud owner of that. Get us shipping info and we will ship that out to you. I presume you're in the US, hopefully, because that's where we want to ship it to. We do sell worldwide, but for the winners of these contests, you must be in the US. Thank you so much. Yeah, only one winner per contest. I'm sorry. You'll have to come back next time if you want to try to win your own. It's purely random, so it really is just the way it comes up. We appreciate your time for sure today. We thank you for your support for NETGEAR and our efforts here and helping us make things better for you. So Alex, thanks again. And everybody else, thank you for coming. See you next time. Oh, I should say the next webinar is right there too. Next month, yeah. September 14th, 11 a.m.
How to build a Wi-Fi network.
Yep, that'll be a good one too. So I'm sure that'll be Doug. And we have some great Wi-Fi options now, and we're doing a big push in general for the residential market, the custom integration market. This is one way to see what the goodness we have with our wireless access points, be it Wi-Fi 6, Wi-Fi 6E even, to take advantage of those speeds and coverage areas to really up the smart home so it becomes truly a smart home. All righty. That's it. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
All right, guys.
See you next time.